Comprehensive spending review. What is it? It's a government process in the United Kingdom which is carried out by the HM Treasury, and it's used to set firm expenditure limits and, through public service agreements, define the key improvements that the public can expect from these resources. So, as a result of this comprehensive spending review, what two services have been impacted the most by these budget cuts? The two services that have been impacted by these budget cuts are the fire service and the prison service, as the government have allocated more money to all the areas of the uniformed services. New figures show that the fire service have been cut by 140 million since 2016. Also, ministers have reduced funding for fire and rescue services by 13.8% in cash terms over the 5 years since the last government finance settlement, leaving the fire and rescue services exposed as they face emerging threats from floods, wildfires and the recent COVID-19 pandemic. Some fire and rescue services have seen their government funding cut by more than 40%, with some fire brigades losing as much as £22 million. At the beginning of the previous settlement in 2013-14, fire and rescue services received £1.24 billion of government funding. This has dropped to just £873 million for 2021-22, a cut of £367 million. So as a result of these major budget cuts, what impact will this have on the public service and the employees within that service? Well, between 2010-11 and 2019-20, the UK Fire and Rescue Brigade is expected to have a reduction of around 140 million in its budgets. As a result of this, there could be major consequences towards the employees of the service and the functional ability of the service itself. Due to the major decrease in funding for the fire service, there has been a reduction in fire services officers around the country, in both full-time roles and control staff. Since 2011, there has been a decrease of around 8,000 firefighter roles, this difference being from 43,000 down to 35,000. Due to this reduction of people in the service, it has had a negative impact on the ability of the fire service to respond to many emergency situations. Major incidents such as Grenfell and Buncefield aren't likely to occur often. However, the service must have the capacity to be able to deal with these situations. The decrease of employees within the fire brigade has seen firefighters need to travel outside of their jurisdiction, an example of this being in the summer of 2018. In this time, fire and rescue services were called to provide help to Lancashire and Greater Manchester to fight the Winter Hill fires. Studies have shown that over half the fire brigade in the UK and Wales have seen a significant increase in work based around prevention and protection, meaning that this is at the expense of other areas of work. This is unsustainable for the fire brigade and could increase the risk of fire-related issues in the future. Another service that has found itself being negatively impacted by the budget cuts in recent years is the prison service. Between 2011 and 12 and 2014-15, the prison service saw a decrease of around a quarter of its original budget. Overall, this equates to around £900 million. This has damaged the service in many areas. Some of these areas have been highlighted in the statement, which said, rates of self-harm in prison are close to record levels. There is a recruitment and retention crisis. Reoffending costs society £18 billion a year. These issues go to the extent of 4 in 5 crimes being committed are reoffences. This is due to the lack of available finances in order to either successfully rehabilitate the inmates or to punish them into not wanting to return to UK prisons. Due to the spending cuts, the prison service hasn't had the same opportunities in order to prevent people from offending in the first place, and as a result, the number of people in prisons has doubled in the last 25 years, from around 44,000 all the way up to 82,000 people. And with the budget cuts happening in recent years, the prison services have seen a reduction in its staff members, this either being through furlough or they have left work due to the poor working conditions. So now that we've spoken about the impact the budget cuts will have on the employees of public services and the public service itself, what impact will this have on you, the citizen? Well, as seen by the Winter Hill fire, a reduction of around 1,500 jobs within the fire brigade has caused many of its workers to travel extreme distances to respond to serious issues. Some of these areas most damaged by the cuts are Greater Manchester, West Yorkshire and Merseyside. As a result of this, many local areas will become susceptible to fire-related issues. This is because members of the local fire brigade will be stationed further away due to the lack of staff in other areas and responding to larger national issues, such as wildfires caused by the rising levels of CO2, or major fires like the Grenfell Tower incident. If these small towns and villages are left without any members of the fire brigade to respond to local issues, then the public may become dissatisfied with the lack of safety in the area and may begin to feel afraid due to this lack of immediate response from the fire service. This was confirmed in a statement by Matt Rack, the Fire Brigade's Union General Secretary, as he said, cutting the number of the fire stations and firefighters means it takes longer to answer emergency calls and puts lives at risk. In firefighting, seconds can be the difference between life and death. Not only has the fire service been impacted by budget cuts, but the prison services have also been a major victim of this, and as such, it will cause many issues to members of the public. One of these issues is that the reducing available finances has seen 4 out of 5 members of the prison being reoffenders. This shows that those who are going into prison are not being rehabilitated well within the system, and as such, when they're released, they are dangerous to the public. The people who are released after their sentence are unable to merge correctly back into society and will cause issues in the community, such as being seen as role models by young family members or other young people. If these young people look to the reoffenders as their role models, they'll begin to act similarly and will find themselves in similar positions, putting more strain on the police and prison service. Another issue that the major budget cuts has caused to the prison service is the inability to prevent people from offending in the beginning. In the past, members of the prison service would go to schools and community centres to show them why they should avoid committing crime and to not succumb to peer pressure, which may see them commit crimes and go to prison. However, the prison service's inability to work towards preventing crime means that in the future they may have to deal with more young offenders crowding prison cells, which could lead to more issues such as poor condition for living prisoners, more riots, and increased assault towards prison officers and staff. Finally, I'm going to be telling you which public services have had a budget increase and why this might be needed considering the changes of demographic and just the changing needs in society found in the United Kingdom. The 2 public services that have been positively enforced with the budget increases recently are the NHS and the police service. Hello. Oh, hello Rishi. How are we? Good. What's that? £1 billion to the NHS and 5.4 billion over the next 6 months. Why is that? COVID. Fair enough. All this money together saw the NHS receive around £11.4 billion between 2021 and 2022. This increase of £5.4 billion to the NHS, to the budget of the National Health Service is as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And as a result of the virus's ability to spread and cause damage, this money was a must for the survival and succession of the NHS. The COVID pandemic had left a long-standing effect on the United Kingdom and its citizens, including many people with medical issues besides the coronavirus being unable to receive potentially life-saving treatments and surgeries. This means that many of these people have either passed away due to their medical conditions, or the doctors will struggle to contain and deal with the issue. Therefore, those people may have to receive treatment that they normally wouldn't require, and at the expense of the NHS's budget. Alongside this, with a major increase in migrants and asylum seekers due to the war in Ukraine and many other conflicts around the globe, this has put more strain on the NHS to take care of these people with the limited resources. When looking at the effects of the Ukraine war, by 2022 June, a total of 151,000 applicants were received for the Ukrainian visa schemes. Of these applications, 133,854 applications had been granted access to the United Kingdom. Without funding being elected to the right places within the NHS, the increase in patients could cause major issues, as many of these people migrating have sustained injuries and will need routine checks to ensure they are healthy and have received vaccines and treatments against viruses and diseases commonly found in foreign countries. This budget increase is vital for the service, as it would not be able to deal with the backlog required treatments and introduction of new ones through migration. Hello, Kieran.
You're right, Taylor.
Yeah, I've got something for you.
Oh, what is it?
Do you mind telling us about human rights policies and current issues that affect the United Kingdom?
No problem. What are some of the human rights policies and current issues we face today? The human rights policies are rights inherent to all human beings regardless of protected characteristics such as race, sex, nationality, ethnicity, language, religion, or any other status. Human rights include the right to life and liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of opinion and expression, the right to work and education, and many more. Everyone is entitled to these rights without discrimination. Now we explained what these policies are, what is the strength of having these policies in place? The strengths of having this policy in place is that it makes society safer for people in minority communities, such as the LGBTQ+, making it more sustainable for gays, bisexuals, transgender, etc. to live without discrimination. This policy also protects people that are most vulnerable from trauma, mental trauma, and from discrimination or neglection from things they have no control over, like their race or upbringing, and physical traumas such as domestic abuse, child abuse, etc. This helps to protect women from domestic violence and keeping families together. This is also makes the phrase "never again" close to reality. Never again is a phrase or slogan which is associated with the lesson of the Holocaust and other genocides, hoping that they never happen again. This policy also applies in the court of law, where assuming someone is innocent until proven guilty of any crime is a legal principle. If the prosecution does not prove the charge is true, then the person is acquitted of the charges. The prosecution must, in most cases, prove that the accused is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. By backing up a reasonable amount of evidence, if reasonable doubt remains, the accused must be acquitted. Now we know what strengths human rights policies have. What are two recent issues that have had an impact on the human rights of citizens? The first is the COVID example. The COVID-19 pandemic had a significant impact on the human rights of citizens around the globe. The measures taken to control the spread of the virus included lockdowns both locally and nationally, and as a result, these travel restrictions affected people's freedom and movement and right to work. Additionally, the pandemic has highlighted inequalities in access to healthcare and education, particularly in the marginalised communities. The next example is the refugee crisis. The ongoing refugee crisis, particularly in the Middle East and Europe, has had a significant impact on the human rights of refugees and other migrants. Many people have been forced to flee their homes due to conflict and persecution, and they have often faced discrimination, lack of access to basic service, and violence. The UK government proposed a new law, the asylum policy, that would allow authorities to deport people arriving on its shores via small boats across the English Channel that divides the islands from France. This new legislation has been introduced by the Prime Minister as he tries to put an end to small boat crossings. Last year, 45,755 men, women and children crossed the channel in small boats, and nearly 3,000 people have already made the crossing this year. Famous ex-footballer Gary Lineker refused to apologise for his tweets criticising the government's asylum policy. One of the tweets described a video about refugee boats crossing as beyond awful. When challenged by other users online, he responded by saying this is just immeasurable cruel policy directed at the most vulnerable people in language. This is not dissimilar to that used by Germany in the 30s. And I'm out of order. But the impact of his words had his name in the spotlight for quite a long time. This is an approach more akin to authoritarian nations that walk away from international human rights treaties, such as Russia and Belarus. This also goes against the modern slavery rule on the Government UK website, as it asks to identify and support victims and how you can help victims. This means the laws are contradicting each other. Hey Lucy,
Oh, hi, Kieran.
I've got a topic for you.
Yeah, what's the topic?
Do you mind talking about responses to national or international events for me, please?
No problem. I'll be talking about worldwide responses to national and international events. What is the new immigration system in the UK? December 31st, 2020, the UK adopted a new immigration system as the freedom movement between the United Kingdom and the European Union ended. The UK's new immigration policy has now been put in place. The government made a commitment to the public to take back control of our borders and put in place
The government made a commitment to the public to take back control of our borders and put in place an immigration system that works in the national interest. It marked the beginning of a wider multi-year programme of change led by the Home Office to radically transform the operation of our border and immigration system.
Now, why is it in place? The new immigration policy, which was Britain's exit from the EU, the economic and policy union of which the UK had been a member since 1973, that changed on June 23, 2016, when the UK voted to leave the EU. The residents decided that the benefits of free trade were not enough to offset the cost of free movement of immigration. Now, what are the strengths of this? The aim of the UK's new immigration policy is to restore the UK status of the sovereign, independent country so that the UK can once again determine its own future. That meant changing our rules and regulations to best serve the population's priorities and returning the democratic accountability to the UK's own institutions. There are a few benefits and strengths of the UK's new immigration policy. It has ended free movement and taken back control of the borders, restored democratic control of our lawmaking, restored the UK Supreme Court as the final arbiter of the law that applies in the UK, made it tougher for the EU criminals to enter the UK and taken back control of the UK's waters. Here are the limitations of the new immigration policy. Despite the strengths of the new immigration policy, there are also a few limitations and disadvantages. One of these disadvantages is that the average UK household cost, the fee of tax import and export of products would no longer be possible between the UK and the member countries of the EU, leading to a swift increase in the price of assorted items. Loss of foreign investment. The European Union, being a multinational foreign body that holds a 25% share of the global GDP, has its fair share of power in matters of foreign relations and investments. In 2012, almost half of the foreign direct investment that the UK received was associated with the activities of the EU. Shortage of high-skilled labour. Brexit would require all citizens of the EU nations to return to their own country, leaving many job vacancies. The criteria for the post is often not met by the people living in the UK, leading to an empty job vacancy. This could harm the potential economic growth of the nation. I will now be talking about the new laws and legislations on domestic violence cases. What is it? The Domestic Abuse Act 2021 is an Act of Parliament of the United Kingdom that aims to help tackle domestic violence, which is not just physical but also emotional, controlling and economic. The Act provides a new statutory definition of domestic abuse, recognises children as victims and strengthens the response and protection across all agencies, including the police, courts, local authorities and service providers. So why is it in place? It aims to raise awareness and understanding about the devastating impact of domestic abuse on victims and their families. This Act further improves the effectiveness of the justice system in providing protection for victims of domestic abuse and bringing perpetrators to justice. Strengthen the support for victims of abuse by statutory agencies. There are many strengths to this new Act as it aims to raise awareness and understanding about the impact of domestic abuse on victims. For the old Act, domestic abuse was only considered physical abuse and violence. For the new Act created in 2021, domestic abuse now also considers mental and emotional abuse too. The Act banned cross-examination of survivors by perpetrators in the family and civil courts. The victims can now testify as witness using video link. They do not need to attend the court in person and testify behind the screen. This change is welcoming, especially for women who may be pregnant and find it stressful and intimidating to attend the courts. Also, the Act granted all eligible homeless victims of domestic abuse an automatic priority need for homelessness assistance.
On the 14th of June 2017, a major electrical fire broke out on the fourth storey of Grenfell Tower block in North Kensington, West London. The fire was as a result of an electrical fault found in the refrigerator and ascended rapidly up the exterior of the Grenfell Tower block. It took around 24 hours for the fire service to regain control of the fire. The result of this disaster was extreme, with 72 deaths being attributed to the fire, as well as 70 injuries. These numbers meant that the Grenfell Tower fire became the deadliest structural fire within the UK since 1988. Both financial damage and loss of life caused by the disaster was the largest since the Piper Alpha oil platform disaster. When looking at the media's immediate response to the disaster, it was chaotic. Reporters and other members of the media were looking left and right to find who was responsible for the fire, and the blame game had begun. Two reports that stand out during this time were articles by the Mirror and the Daily Mail, both of which raised questions around the responsibility of the government and the council. These debates were sparked by the media because Grenfell Tower block was of social housing status, meaning the government and council were in control of the upkeep and safety of the residents. With people needing to direct their anger somewhere, the Mirror and the Daily Mail's reports provided a short-term solution to the major disaster. Despite the reactionary reports by the media and the short-term responsibility it is placed upon the government and the local councils, the public continued to raise questions of other leaders and corporations. Due to the devastation of the Grenfell Tower disaster, inquiries began to truly identify who needed to take accountability. As a result of these inquiries, a major amount of the blame and want for accountability was placed upon the fire service, as many believed that they failed to respond adequately to the incident. However, through years' worth of inquiries and investigations, it found that the reason for the rapid spread of the fire on the tower block was because it was wrapped in flammable cladding. Who was responsible for this? The LFB. The LFB stands for the London Fire Brigade, and through a report by Sir Martin, alongside supporting the courage of the firefighters, it also found that the LFB had made institutional failures in the planning and preparation both prior to and throughout the incident. Sir Martin's report stated that their preparation was gravely inadequate. He also pointed out that despite the control room staff, which responded to 999 calls, were able to undoubtedly save lives, a close examination of the audio recordings revealed that they had been provided with a lack of training, meaning they were unable to adequately respond to the 999 calls coming throughout the incident.
Despite of this, there are some barriers that prevent the Act from maximising its utility. These concerns have been raised by various parties throughout the debates of the bill. No protection for migrant women. Migrant women have no access to public funds, financial assistance and refuge accommodation. In other words, they are often placed in a catch-22 situation. They are unable to return to their home country because divorce is shameful and not acceptable in their culture. On the other hand, they are unable to escape from the violent perpetrator as they have nowhere to go in the UK. As well as this, problems of universal credit system. For the time being, the universal credit is paid by default into one account. The perpetrators can take ultimate control over the entire household income, thereby enabling economic abuse on the victim. Moving on, I'll be looking at the UK's response to international events in Ukraine. Approximately 5.5 million people have been displaced inside Ukraine and 8 million people have registered as refugees across Europe. This is the largest refugee crisis in Europe since the Second World War. UK and international partners are united in support with Ukraine and the war it is currently going through. The UK government is providing a range of economic, humanitarian and defensive military assistance to Ukraine and is opposing additional sanctions on Russia and Belarus. The UK government quickly committed large-scale humanitarian funding, sending experts to the region and delivering life-saving supplies to Ukraine, including medical and food aid. The UK has provided 220 million of humanitarian assistance to Ukraine, making us the third largest humanitarian donor. Ukraine and Russia war had a massive impact on the UK and the UK budget. The UK has given Ukraine millions of pounds of the taxpayers' money to fund Ukraine in the war by giving them weapons and security. Russia accounts for just 0.7% of the UK goods and services exports and 1.5% of imports. The UK's biggest exports to Russia are vehicles and their parts, machinery and appliances. Imports from Russia to the UK were entirely comprised of oil and petroleum products and precious metals in 2019. This later year, for which data is both available and unaffected by the pandemic. Because of the war, Russia has cut off all oil that they trade to the UK. Also, because of Brexit, Britain can use diplomacy outside of the grips of the European Union and make decisions by themselves on what is best for them. Russia accounts for a much larger share of global commodity supply. Ukraine is also a major supplier of agricultural commodities. Global oil prices have increased by 11% and UK wholesale gas prices have increased by 40% since the invasion. In March, UK consumer confidence fell to its lowest since November 2020. Now we're talking about technology. How has the use of technology changed in the public and public services? Technology has and will continue to shift how humanity work in the public service. We use technology to learn new skills, ideas or concepts. It creates more learning opportunities for people and provides an enormous amount of information and facts for people. It also has changed the way healthcare is in the UK. It gives the service users more control over their health and well-being. It helps to keep communication with families, professionals and staff in the health industry. In the surgery aspect of technology, surgery is safer than it has ever been. It is less invasive, less blood loss, smaller incisions and a much faster recovery. However, there are also some limitations to the change of technology. Technology has very addictive qualities and most people in the world will look at their phones over 100 times a day, which can stop them from doing stuff that is important. Technology is used in war and conflict now, which can be extremely dangerous and life-threatening. Technology has helped to advance weapons and bombs, etc., which could cause a massive amount of damage to the world and population. How have the services had to change to meet the needs of citizens in a more technologically advanced society? Technology has significantly changed the way services provide to their citizens. Many services are now provided and available online. This makes it much more convenient and accessible for people to use. Childline is a counselling service for children and young adults up to their 19th birthday. The counselling service is all online and over the phone, which is good as it meets the needs of people who have phones and laptops, etc. It is an easier way for young people to call someone when they need it with safeguarding adults who are there to help.
Now we've discussed technology, we'll look into the media side of things. Here are 3 examples of diverse types of media in society used by the public and the services. Social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter and Instagram are used by the public and the service alike. The public uses social media to connect with family and friends, share their thoughts and experiences and consume news and entertainment. This obviously comes with different perspectives and opinions, meaning there will be mixed views and opinions on the public services. And when news such as the George Floyd case surfaced, this caused public outrage which led to many BLM protests and many people began questioning the force, globally leading to hatred on the service. However, with advantages to social media, like being able to see what is happening around the globe within seconds, there are downsides such as fake news stories with surfers and hackers around the world not contributing to the service. The broadcasting media is used to promote and publicise either safety alerts or alerts, for example, smoking alerts and its downsides. Television is a popular medium that is widely used by the public and services. It provides news, entertainment, educational purpose such programs and advertisements. The public uses shows and movies while service use it to advertise their products and service. which also has its advantages and disadvantages, with the advantages being that the news on a television is a lot more accurate than dodgy websites, as everything on TV needs to be filtered and followed through to ensure no misissues and no misuses become relevant. The disadvantages are that not all television is modest and accurate, and some sides can be highly addictive, like TV shows every week or a new series getting aired on a programme, or poker and gambling shows. Print media refers to any form of media that is printed on paper, such as newspapers, magazines, books and brochures. It is a traditional form of media that has been in use for centuries and is still widely used in the present day. Print media has several advantages over digital media, and it is tangible, meaning that readers can physically hold it and touch it, and this is easily stored and accessible. Print media is considered more trustworthy and reliable than digital media, as it is subject to more rigorous fact-checking and additional standards, and editorial standards. The disadvantages are that it's declining circulation and advertising revenue. However, many print media outlets have adapted to these challenges by incorporating digital strategies onto their business models, such as referring online subscriptions or digital editions of their publications, e.g. websites. Now we've looked at different medias, what is the main role of the media? The role of the media is to inform, educate and entertain the public. The media serves as a means of communication between individuals and society, helping people to stay informed about current events, issues and trends. In doing so, the media has several key functions, including providing accurate and reliable information. One of the most important roles of the media is to provide accurate and reliable information to the public. This includes reporting on current events, investigate journalism and fact-checking. Promoting transparency and accountability, the media plays an important role in promoting transparency and accountability in government, business and other institutions by reporting on issues and holding those in power accountable for their actions. The media can help prevent corruption and abuse of power. Facilitating public debate. The media provides a platform for public debate and discussion on important issues, allowing different perspectives and opinions to be shared and debated. And finally, providing entertainment and cultural content. The media also plays a role in providing entertainment and cultural content to the public, such as movies, shows, music and sports. In October 2017, the hashtag #MeToo movement started as the New York Times published an article about movie producer Harvey Weinstein's alleged sexual misconduct. The article prompted a wave of women to come forward with their own stories of sexual harassment and assault, leading to the hashtag #MeToo movement. The media coverage of the movement highlighted the pervasive issue of sexual harassment and assault in various industries and raised awareness about the importance of reporting and addressing such behaviour, which later took over the media again when Wayne Couzens, an off-duty cop, pulled her over, handcuffed her and placed her in his car before driving her to the near Dover, where he raped and strangled her before burning her body and disposing of the evidence. This once again brought the police service to the spotlight, and again, not in a good way, bringing greater fears and threats to other officers who only want to protect and serve their community. The higher-ups promised more thorough checks of their officers and swore they would handle the aftermath of their situation appropriately.